Alright, so continue Hilchos Melichas, Siman Samach Tes, Greek review of Yud Beis, and maybe we'll go into Yud Gimel. Dealing with a situation that can arise from time to time where Melicha was not done timely. And time is of the essence, because we learned that the Geonim tell us, there's no makor for this in the Gemara, but the Geonim do tell us that they have a Kabbalah, it's a tradition, that if Melicha is not done timely, within 3 days of the Shechina, then somehow the dam dries up. Dries up does not mean that the dam disappears. You still have to contend with it. The dam is still there. It's just that the traditional way of removing the dam from the Basar, the Melicha way, will not work anymore. That is not to say you can't use the piece of meat. You can still use it, but you can't cook it. You will have to do tzli. Tzli somehow will be able to draw out the blood through the fire. So that's always a possibility. I mean, some would even say that there's no hefsed meruba in a situation where you just go ahead and do tzli. In other words, why rely on a hefsed meruba when there's another option? That sometimes is raised, that this counter argument is raised. Why is this a hefsed meruba when I can do tzli?
What was the hefsed?
In other words, in situations where there may be, in a hefsed meruba you can do it.
Is this with respect to, or is it other situations?
No, in this and in other similar situations.
Hefsed meruba after 3 days.
No, I'm giving a general. I'm giving a general situation because we spoke about the fact that some people they don't want to have tzli, right? So the question was a separate question: can you do bishul after the tzli? It's Pesach, it's the Seder. They don't want to have tzli. Now they understandably they had to do tzli because this meat was not salted for 3 days. But can they do bishul now after this? So it's a separate question. And some would say, wait a minute. What kind of a hefsed meruba is it? What kind of a shat tatchak is it? You can do tzli, so be happy. How much do we allow for? How lenient are we going to be just because somebody doesn't prefer to eat tzli? So this argument of it's a shat tatchak, it's a hefsed meruba, it's okay, we can rely on this opinion. Some raise the argument that it's not a real hefsed meruba shat tatchak, you can still have it. You know what I mean?
What's the objection against? Let's say, what's the objection against cooking it now?
So we'll see. We'll review it. We're going to review the point. But I gave you an example of where somebody may raise the objection that this is not a real hefsed meruba. When you can still eat it, you have to eat it roasted.
My question was, why would you even need the meruba? You did sleep, so the chayra the dam was removed.
Right.
So now you can.
Right.
You can eat it. You can also cook it.
Sure.
Now that you can eat, also cook. I would think.
No, right. Yeah.
So why would you even need
my example is right. My example is obviously not in this particular example, where you had to have done it tzli regardless because it was not salted for 3 days. But there are situations, and maybe we'll cover 1 or 2, where you have the option, and that option is only behefsed meruba.
And how would now? So you could still salt it. There's enough time to salt it.
Right.
But instead you want to cook it after instead of salting it and cooking.
Yeah, I didn't give the example yet, but there may be such an example where they may say, but in hefsed meruba, go ahead, we can rely on several opinions about a dacha. There's different reasons of why we need a dacha kamaiso, why we need about the last dacha, and if things were not done perfectly, right, you may be able to, in the case of original case where the melicha was not done properly because the hadacha was not done at all, the first hadacha. So there was a question whether you can redo it a second time now. Okay, so the melicha didn't work. So can I do hadacha now? So we had a machlokes in that. There are situations where, I didn't specify a situation, but there are situations where someone may say, okay, the hefsed meruba we can rely on the materium and the lenience. I didn't give an example, okay? There may be an objection to those situations in saying, why is this considered a hefsed meruba when I can still do tzli, as an example? If I can deal with it in a different way. I can sell it to a guy. There's no real loss here. Yeah, but I need to eat something. Oh, you need to eat. You see what I mean? Depending on what the alternative is. Hefsed meruba, many times means, this is a big loss. I have to throw it away. I can't use it. Yeah. So it all depends. There are times where somebody may raise the objection, this is not a real hefsed meruba. So what? You can't have it cooked. You can eat it tzli. You see what I mean? that may not be considered a hefsek meruba. All right. So anyway, in Sif Yud Beis, the Mechaber brings down this halacha, this chumrah of the goyim, that the meat that was without melicha was not, the melicha was not for 3 days. He quotes the goyim that nisyabesh doma b'toicha velo teitze velo yetze oida lidei melicha ve'en la'ochlo bavusho. It will no longer come out with melicha. That is the way he paskins. That's how he holds. And you cannot eat it cooked. In other words, even if you would salt it, obviously, it won't work. And since it's not working, that means it has dam. That means you can't cook it. You're going to cook it. You're going to have the dam being pourish from mokum lemokum. That internal blood is going to move around, and that's going to cause problems. As we said, so long as the dam has not moved in a raw piece of meat, it's actually kosher to eat in a sense, even though it contains the blood. Once it has moved, and that moving can come about through bishul very easily, even though through melicha it happens too, but through bishul for sure. So, what do? Elatzli. But the Mechaber adds, after you roasted lo yivashleno. He doesn't say asur. He says lo yivashleno. Don't cook it after you've done the tzli. Vim bishlo, but if you did anyway, all right, mutar v'diavad. Then he adds, don't leave meat without soaking it and salting it for 3 days, because you know you're going to do tzli and this one we're going to roast. So we're not going to salt it right away. No, you may forget to do tzli, right? So don't ever do that anticipating that you're going to do a tzli. Just do the melicha right away. Take care of it as soon as possible, and in this way you don't have a problem.
Melicha within 3 days?
Yeah.
Or just the dachos days?
No, the melicha. Now, what happens if you can't accomplish the melicha within 3 days, but you still want to cook it, and you know ahead of time you won't manage? That's Sif Yud Gimel. There's a way that you can get around it by soaking the piece of meat for half an hour within those 3 days. From the soaking, you start 3 days again.
When you ship it by truck.
Exactly. Yeah, when you ship it cross country. Either it was frozen, which we'll talk about again, completely, like a rock, or they soak it. And that is actually the option that's brought down halacha. Nothing about frozen here, but talking about sharia, soaking it in water. If you know that this meat will not be able to salt it, you cut it up, right? And no time to salt, you're transporting it, you're shipping it, you're taking it with you. You obviously have a refrigerated truck, right? You're going to need to soak it. Or the question is, can you just wash it down? Will that be sufficient? That we'll talk about in the CPU. What exactly has to be done to that meat to avoid the deadline of 72 hours? Anyway, so we said the Marami Rutenberg brings down, the Rosh brings down this Chumras HaGoinim, the Or Zarua. Quite a few Rishonim bring it down. But there was a machlokes amongst them whether you can do bishul after the tzli. That was the one area where there was differences of opinion. Trumas Hadeshin says it's asur, and it appears to be from the Chuvas Rosh as well. The Smak says is medayek from the Tur, that also it says ein la ochlo mevusho. So it appears like he's saying you shouldn't. All right, at least lechatchila not. And we saw that the Beis Yosef pretty much holds like that, as he writes in the name of the Agos Shara Dura. The Isser Beheter is one of those who says it's okay to cook it after the tzli. And basically what we have is a lechatchila din and a b'di'evad din in the Mechaber. In other words, it's not really asur, but we need to understand why was it asur to begin with. I mean, okay, so it's not asur b'di'evad, but why should it be asur lechatchila? You've done the tzli. Doesn't the tzli take out all the blood? So what are you afraid of? So the ones who are matir, that's what they say. Right? The Isser Beheter, for example. What's the problem? You did tzli. The tzli got all the blood out. You got all the blood out. Go ahead and do whatever you want to it. You want to pickle it, you want to cook it, no problem. So what are the Machmirim going to say? By the way, I think that the Taz also brought down here that the Rashal is Aser's B'di'evet. We don't hold like that. We hold that B'di'evet, it's okay. But he brings down the Rashal that says it's also B'di'evet. So what's the problem? The problem is, as the Taz brings down, the Shema lo yatsa kol damo al yedei tzliya. Just the opposite. They are concerned that maybe not all the blood came out. Why should they be concerned? Doesn't fire bring it? Only because of the chumras hageonim, in a sense. That somehow those 3 days did something to that blood, that perhaps even Sli cannot get all of it out. But afterwards, when you do the bishul, some more will come out. Okay, so don't do. But b'di'evet, we assume that all of it came out through the tzli. That's all. Since remember, it's a chumras hageonim to begin with. This whole thing is a chumras hageonim, so because of that, we can be somewhat lenient in a b'di'evet situation and say, well, it's a chumras hageonim, and if you did tzli, well, most likely at least the tzli took care of it. But the chatchila we're machmir because we're concerned, but perhaps not all of it even came out through tzli. There are times, by the way, that tzli does not succeed in taking out the dam. For example, that if the meat somehow absorbed the dam ba'in, as we saw in the very beginning of the Siman, not its own dam that is coming out and moving out all the time, but dam from the outside that somehow it got absorbed into it, that can never come out.
So in that situation, roasted for eating either.
Right, exactly. So that's a very interesting scenario, and you wonder why. No, I never really fully understood how this works. Why cannot Sli, maybe we have to speak to a chemist about it, but why will not Sli draw out anything inside? So what if it absorbed? I can appreciate the fact that something that has been absorbed maybe can no longer come out through Melicha. Okay, maybe Melicha is not strong enough. I mean, there's all kinds of explanations you can give. The tzir nistamu nikveh pleta. At some point, once you washed it out, I can understand that the pores are sealed, cannot get it out through Melicha. But why not fire?
Well, it's not.
Okay, heat. Yeah, right. Okay.
Once we have ruled form of heat does not accomplish it.
What would you say about bishul? I'm going to put 100 gallons of water, of course. Would the bishul get out all the blood that's in there?
Water.
To be mevatel it. And there won't be a problem with bittul isol lechatchila in this case. I have riots that they would allow me to do that. If it worked, right? There's a Rabbi Elyahu that says that there's certain times that you can even do these things. A bitter, because it's not a real bitter. It's not a real bitter.
And it's not a necessary.
Exactly, yeah. So, would it work? Would the actual boiling water take out the blood? No, I'm saying, I'm asking, I'm thinking, in a situation where the blood has been absorbed, I'm told the Melicha doesn't work on it, Sli will not work on it. Will bishul work on it? I put it in hot boiling water. Does the bishul have the power, more power than Sli? Apparently it does. But will it take out all the blood? We're not so sure that it can take out everything.
Why does it? Why does bishul? Where do we see that?
No, we see that from the various halachas that the bishul causes the dam inside to move around. Yeah, but with the tzli, it appears that
it even takes it out.
Yes.
So that would mean that it's more powerful, not less.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't. It appears from the lashon of the various examples that bishul is more powerful than tzli. Remember, tzli in itself does not answer as much as bishul. Okay, you can even just look at isurim themselves; it's not the same. Except that on the surface, I would agree with you that they both are very hot.
But wait a second, why does Sli not bishul does? Not because it's more effective removing the blood, getting it to flow.
Right.
It's because Sli gets rid of it. Not only move within the meat, but actually extracts it and.
Well, that's the question. Well, that's the question. Will it extract? That's why they're machmir here.
But that would render it more effective in the meat proper for eating than bishul. Will make it more effective.
Right, but in this particular halacha, they don't claim so because they say tzli may not succeed in drawing out all the blood.
But that's compared to soap in boiled water.
Right. So what I'm saying is perhaps if tzli is not successful, maybe bishul is.
And what wouldn't that see?
No, I'm not allowed to do that only because of what we've learned before. What would the bishul do for any dam that was make it move
without removing it?
And without a move. So what have we seen from that? Again, I'm thinking out loud. So what we've seen so far is that even bishul.
Why even? How did that?
Because bishul is more powerful than tzli. Yeah. Bishul is much more powerful than tzli. Yeah.
But again, tzli will render for eating for consumption.
Right.
Bishul will render a piece salted not for consumption.
Right.
So legabe, what we're trying to
Well, you know why?
right?
The reason for that is because it's an open fire.
So the
Bishul
Gabi-
is not open; it's closed.
But legabe, what we're trying to accomplish, maybe to render a piece of meat
Yes, that
kosher
yes.
for consumption,
That yes.
sli is more effective than bishul.
Yes, that's correct.
Fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Those
but I
cases.
asked a hypothetical question.
I understand that.
Right.
I mean, regarding that hypothetical
Regarding-
question, I think the right conclusion to learn from the fact that sleep does make it kosher. Bishul doesn't make it. The legabe making it kosher too. Sleep's more effective.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's the container problem. Because it can go out and it can go in. It can go out and it can go back in just as the way it came out. With sli, we don't have that
Whatever
disadvantage.
factor is responsible,
Right.
ultimately is more effective than bishul.
Okay.
Whatever the factor is.
You're right, but I'm talking in a hypothetical question.
And I'm answering
where you
hypothetically.
have 100 gallons of water, you may have less of a problem with bishul.
Excuse me. The problem with meat never
Right.
was that if it goes out, it'll come back in. The problem with meat was
Yes.
that it'll move within, but not remove itself from them. Dam haparish is dam that remained in the meat, not
Right.
one that went out of the meat and returned back inside.
It was both.
So why don't? But
It's
that,
both,
Yeah, but
right?
with respect to dam haparish, which is blood that remained in
Right.
the meat, that problem I don't have with sleep.
Right, I understand that.
But the blood does move within the meat.
Yeah,
also.
anyway, we're going around in circles because what you said is correct. We see from halacha that we've learned that the main concern with bishul has always been, we've seen this, so it's not so much of a hypothetical question, I presented it so, but in reality we actually see that even bishul, and I'm adding the word even because let's assume that bishul is more powerful, it may not eventually succeed, like you said, as sli does, because it will move the blood, but who's to say it will get all the blood out, where we have learned that sli does.
So sleep does get all the blood out?
Yes,
What?
if within 3 days.
I'm okay with 3 days.
Within 3 days,
so after 3 days,
sli is capable. If I don't have salt, I can use sli and it will draw out all the blood.
And then I can cook it.
Yes, I could cook it.
And that no one has it.
Nobody has a problem
It's
with that.
only if it's more than 3 days that people have
Yes,
objections.
exactly,
against what
exactly.
Ah.
Yes, exactly. So you're right. Sli has been more effective. Why is bishul not effective? Because we're told that bishul may not get all the blood out. Only because of that. The various examples, it just may not. Some say it does. We'll see. Some do say that bishul can get all of it out. I mean, it's a possibility, but we're concerned. And once you've done bishul, you have a problem. You move the blood. And in case that all that blood did not come out, you're worse off than before. So therefore, Basar shelo nimlach, that was nisbashel, is a big problem. Even if you had 100 gallons of water.
And now would
Because that
still
doesn't-
help after you cooked it without salting it?
So that was
would
my other question. My other question was chemically, physically. Isn't there a way to draw out remaining juices in this meat? I mean, that's what you do when you dehydrate something.
dried blood that remained in the meat. And
Any blood that remained in any liquids, I want to
Just
dry
saying,
it out
no.
completely.
If blood,
Just squeeze it out.
yeah, but if blood remained meat,
Yeah.
that was dam shaparish
Right,
after cooking the meat,
right.
and now it's dried.
Yeah.
So it's dried blood that's in the meat. It's no longer liquid. It's dried.
It's
Would
dried.
that be permitted to eat?
No,
Still not.
still not, unless it's very minute amounts.
So then it's misbachel because of bittul, not because of.
Well, if you have, the problem is we don't know how much there is. You're right. If there would be a little bit, it would
And
be.
if I was able to isolate the blood and take the dried blood and
Right.
put it all on a plate with patella to eat.
Also not.
Otherwise, you could eat turkey.
Why?
Because if you were not worried dry,
Yeah, but treif beef jerky,
Well,
treif?
or without you being
Right, without kosher even, yeah.
shechted, but not
Right.
allowed.
We don't allow it, no.
It's got to be more than we don't know.
Right.
And there is done.
And I think you told me that
There is kosher
they
beef
have it
jerky.
in Germany
No.
for breakfast, right? With the
That's
blood.
something else.
Yeah.
They have kosher beef
And you can
jerky.
get kosher.
Yeah.
Kosher.
Right.
But we don't allow it, so we see that it doesn't seem to work.
What is it exactly that we don't?
I'm not sure I followed you. Yeah.
Completely shechted
Sure.
and dry it.
Right.
We require you dry it.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, sure, because sometimes people just dry the meat.
Right.
Right.
If you
It's awesome.
If you dried it, since you
Yeah, right. No, he's just saying dry blood is still also.
dry blood is still awesome.
Yeah, yes.
And as if like you eat raw, you can eat raw meat.
Right.
Because you can't see the blood, didn't come out, the blood.
Right.
If it dries or in there, it didn't come out.
No, the problem isn't coming out. The problem is moving within the meat
yeah.
without coming
So
out.
if the process...
As soon as it moved within the meat.
Yeah. So in the case of drying the meat, by the way, in the case of drying the meat, if the drying was done at a stage where the blood has not moved yet at all, technically you may be able to eat it, sure. Yeah. I don't think that ever happens because they first steam it or boil it or whatever, and then they dry it. But that would be interesting if you had.
So they would have to salt it before.
They would have to salt it before they dry it.
But but then they don't have any blood. I guess it would be required so that blood.
No, I don't think so. No. Yeah. So anyway, so that was the concern here with allowing 3 days to elapse without doing anything. So the bishul after the tzli was still a concern lechatchila because maybe the tzli did not get all the blood out after all. It's only because of the 3 days. Had 3 days not gone by, we do say that the tzli succeeds in removing the blood just like salt does. Perhaps it does even a better job than the salt. The heat is so powerful that it draws out everything. But we are soimech that half an hour or an hour, whatever it is, of melicha, well done, all sides covered, the right salt, will do the job. And whatever remains still coming out is called mohel. And it's important to note because we have here a long taz that gives various scenarios, which we'll go through very quickly as to what the halacha is. So we need to have this in mind that if the melicha was done properly, anything that comes out after that is called mohel. It's not asr. The question will be, however, what happens if it sits in it? Okay, so we'll get to that soon. So that's really the only differences of opinion between those who are matir, bishul lechatchila after the tzli, and those who say no, don't do it. Are we concerned that perhaps some blood may still come out with the bishul now that you're going to do bishul? All right. Now, what about liver? We haven't gotten to that yet, but we'll learn the halachas of liver. Liver you don't cook. Liver you roast. A little bit of salt. We do. That's the minig. The minig is to salt it a little bit.
And salting loose blood?
No, not really. A little bit. Just a little bit. We'll get to that. That's one of the halachas that we're going to learn. Why we do it and what does it accomplish. So the question is, can I cook the liver after I roasted it? What's the difference between this and the meat? Now, when we talk about liver, by the way, that was not salted for 3 days.
Oh.
Never salt. Okay?
So immediately before roasting it, you put a little salt on it, but that was 3 days after.
Yeah, that little salt has nothing to do with
salt.
it. No, that's not. A little
Okay.
salt, right.
So it wasn't salted, so it's not only meant 3 days. It wasn't salted.
Yeah, remember, the Chumras HaGoyna I don't think it mentions liver. So that's why the crazy place brings this interesting scenario.
Oh.
What happens with liver that was not processed, not taken care of, not kashered within 3 days, the way it usually is done, through sleep?
So it wasn't roasted till 3 days later.
Right. Can I cook that one after 3 days? Because ultimately, liver is roasted regardless. You never salt liver. So do we say the same thing? The blood got stuck there, got dried up there. The roasting won't do anything, or as good, and therefore don't do bishul either. You follow the same question? Do we say that about liver that you roast anyway? So he says it's okay. He says that perhaps even those who are machmir would be makel with liver. Why? He says because first of all, the chumras hageonim was very specific. It did not say necessarily that this applies to everything, right? Let me see if I wrote it down here. Yeah, I think he says that. I don't have the whole crazy place here, but we do find that, and we'll see it in other scenarios, that the chumras hageonim was very specific where this could be a problem. Meat that was not salted for 3 days. Doesn't talk about anything else, other scenarios. But the crazy place, it does add that the reason why he would be makel with liver that was not taken care of for 3 days is because we always have the shita of Tosas. Shita of Tosas says is that the dam of liver, liver is all blood. It's a dam that is also midrabanan. It's not a forbidden blood deraisa. That's how we bring it. The Tosas brings down. Dama kovet is not dam deraisa. I don't remember. I didn't have a chance to review it again inside. Just remember that that's the sheet of Tosas. Have to check it out to see. I mean, there's no, we don't have a Beferish Isser. The Chachamim answered that. As to why it's not included, I don't remember exactly. But that's what they say. The Dam Akovid, there's a shita like that it was the Chachamim who said it's Asr. And therefore, since it's only an Isser Derabanan, the Dam Akovid, he says, I would have no problem being makel to cook it after it has been roasted, even though 3 days elapsed. Follow me? In other words, it will be a little bit more lenient with liver. All right, we briefly touched on frozen meat. In those days, they didn't have frozen like a rock. So the question is, what about frozen? So there is a Prima Godim that brings down Minchas Yaakov, a question that the Minchas Yaakov had, where the meat sat in water and it froze. That's the question that was raised. It sat in water and it froze. So what's the question? So over there, the question that was raised was, is this kavush? Remember, we learned this many, many times, that kavush kemavusho. Meat sitting in water too long. Kavush is, Yeah, 24 hours. Yeah, exactly. Mace lace. It would have a similar effect to being cooked. I mean, that's how you pickle stuff. Over time, sitting in spices and sitting in vinegar, I mean, it does something, it has an effect. So that was the question, I think, of the Minchas Yaakov. Prima Godim just brings it down, I saw. So, over there, he says, since it was frozen, it's not exactly kavush. All right? But, I think the Prima Godim says, we infer from that it would not help the meat in its 3 days. But don't think that just because the Minchas Yaakov said it's okay because of kavush, it's not a problem because it was like frozen. It wasn't like sitting in water. That's not called kavush. However, don't learn from that it's spared the problem of being 3 days without melicha. In other words, it won't help it. The fact that it was sitting in water and it got frozen to spare it from the 72 hours that you better have done melicha. No, it will still count.
But if I do the melicha while it's frozen, I don't accomplish anything.
Exactly. That's also true.
So
as we learned before, that you can't do melicha while it's frozen, right?
Right. So how can it be then identical?
No. Then, in other words, the Prima Godim wants to say that just because it sat in water and that water became frozen, cold, doesn't mean you can go ahead and salt it now and cook it. You're going to have to do it sleek. Like ordinary meat that sat without melicha for 3 days. Don't think that frozen water saved it from the 3 days and now you can just do regular melicha. Don't think like that. Don't infer from that you can do that.
Within 3 days, it takes me half an hour to do melicha.
What?
Within 3 days, it takes melicha.
Right, at least.
So let's say it's been frozen now for 2 days, 23 hours.
Right.
I have an hour remaining melicha.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, but it's frozen. Putting salt on it is not going to help me.
Of course not. You have to defrost it.
Right, but let's say I don't have any meat frosting.
You're going to have to do tzli. The Prima Godim says you have to do tzli.
So the frosting is preventing me from correcting the problem, but it's extending the problem at the time.
Sure, because you have no choice. You can. It's not saving you. Just because it's frozen, it's not saving you. The chumra sagoinim. You still have to do tzli.
Does it make freezing? Because that's not
Oh. So Moshe Feinstein, in 2 places I saw, the Igros Moshe says, but this Prima Godim or Minchas Yaakov does not have anything to do with frozen like a rock. That's a different story. They were not talking about that. That concept, he says, did not exist even there. It's interesting, the Aruch HaShulchan does bring down, I saw it. The Aruch HaShulchan says the same thing. It's frozen like a rock. Everybody would, it's okay. That's very interesting. He says everybody. That is everybody. But the Aruch HaShulchan is incredible. He comes up with, but it's interesting. He's in the 1800s, in the late 1800s.
Where is he?
In Europe. Oh, yeah. So, I guess they didn't do this, freeze things like a rock. So I think what he was bringing up was, just in case somehow it was frozen like a rock, somehow you lived in a place where it's maybe.
Cold.
Yeah, exactly. It could be. Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah.
They're all frozen.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting. So Moshe says, but the evidence, it's okay. You can count 3 days after it's defrosted again, or you can salt it. No problem, because what has happened is everything has been stopped. The blood has been stopped, but if you just defrost it, you will notice, he says, that it will go back to being moist and normal meat, just like it was before. The blood did not dry up, and therefore you won't have a problem doing melicha to it. But he says b'di'evet. I think that's what I saw various places say that just b'di'evet, it's okay, don't do this lechatchila, don't freeze a piece of meat, even like a rock, to be able to do melicha afterwards, even though they may be doing that sometimes when there's no choice. The better choice is what we will see in Sifyud Gimel, that Mechabes is beferish, that you soak it again if you can't make the 72-hour time frame. But it's interesting, that, and this is halacha, that if it was frozen like a rock, you're safe. If it was not completely frozen, then it may be a problem. There's another, I don't want to get too many details, there are many other scenarios like Shuman. What do you do with fat that was not salted? You know, fat does mean sometimes a little bit of blood. Does the same halacha apply to fat? So the Pri Megadim says it's okay. You can still salt fat after 3 days. He says that the fat is so soft, it does not harden, and it's not a problem. But there are quite a few poskim I saw that say no. The same halacha will apply to fat. The problem with, you know what the problem with fat is? If you say only tzli is mutter, guess what's going to happen? The whole thing is going to melt in the fire, and there's no more fat left.
Right.
If you say with fat you have to do tzli too after 3 days, you put it on the fire and it's gone. And you know, in those days, fat was a very, very important part of cooking. Schmaltz with the chicken, and so. Anyway, so I figured I'd just mention it briefly, but I'm not going to get into all the details of it. All right, real briefly, I think it's a good idea to go through the Taz. The Taz, I think, brings down here about, there's 6 scenarios. And why is it a good idea to go through them? Because, you know, what we're doing sometimes in halacha is not just learning the halacha, not only learning the makor of the halacha, but we want to see heichet timtzas. Heichet timtzas means, what if? It sharpens the mind, it enables us to see the halacha from various aspects, and sometimes there are actually differences of opinion from the various Rishonim or Achronim. So it pays to go through the additional possibilities that may arise from one halacha. So I'm going to go real quickly through them.
He's actually from the
Is it not White Russia?
Yeah, Belarus.
Yeah, you see Belarus, yeah.
Yeah.
White Russia, yeah.
He was a postic in Lithuania.
Oh, he was supposed to later on? Okay, good to know. Yeah, it's colder there. Yeah. Yeah, the further north you go, yeah. All right, case number 1. So you have Basar, meat, that was sitting around for 3 days and was not salted. The guy went ahead and salted it anyway, after the 3. He did it anyway. Which means what? That we assume that the melicha did not work well, right? He washed or rinsed off the salt, and then somehow he decided to salt it again, and the second time he salted it in a kli she'eino menukav, in a vessel that does not have holes, it's not perforated. You know, that's a problem. Whenever you salt, you want to have the blood to drain. You don't want it to sit in the blood, right? So if you have a kli, if it's sitting in a kli, it better be a kli that has holes where the blood can drain. If it's not going to have holes, it's going to be sitting in the tzir, in the dam, and it's going to be a problem. So remember, what did he do? He sat for 3 days without being salted. He then salted it anyway, rinsed it off, and then somehow his wife or his rabbi told, oh, you can't do that, go ahead and salt it again. I don't think any rabbi would have told him to salt it again, because halacha is do tzli. But anyway, let's say somebody told him, not a rabbi, do tzli again, or he thought of it. And this time he did tzli, but he did it in a kli she'eino menukav. Now we know that salting in a kli she'eino menukav is a problem. He did melicha. What did I say? Tzli. Thank you. He did melicha in a kli she'eino menukav. Now we know that's a problem. Ordinarily, if you do melicha in a kli she'eino menukav, you're in trouble with that meat. You may not be able even to do tzli afterwards. So it's a problem. So don't do melicha unless the blood can drain. But anyway, so this is the second melicha he did in a kli she'eino menukav. So what do you say? There was tzir at the bottom, but the good news was that it was not long sitting in the tzir. It was not the shear of kavisha. It was a little while, not too long. So he brings this case number 1, the opinion of the Yamshel Shlomo, that the meat is mutter. Why? Memanavshach. Memanavshach means either way you look at it. If the first melicha did help, we know it doesn't. But let's say, just in case, some say it helped. If it did help, that means all the blood came out. And what's sitting there right now is just mohel, fluid, juice. If it did not help, like we say, then who's to say the second melicha will help? You see? So the Yam Shlomo says, it's mutter. What do I have to worry? If the first one worked, then the blood came out already. If it didn't, then this is not blood either. It's not going to work the second time. So the Yam Shlomo says, scenario number one, no problem. The Shach, however, argues on this scenario. The Shach says, no, you can't say that. The Shach, apparently he's not alone in this. The Shach holds like many poskim who say, we are concerned that even though 3 days went by, Melicha may help a little bit to take out some blood. The Goinim were machmir that Melicha won't help you with 3 days of no salting to work effectively, to draw out all the blood, but maybe it does draw some blood out. So the Shach says, no, you can't. If he did the second time around, he put it in the Kli She'eino Menukov, it's going to be a problem because some blood could have come out. All we say is that not all the blood is going to come out, but could be some blood will come out. So the Shach disagrees or argues on this. According to this Shach, I think he would not even allow it b'tzli, because, it sat in real blood. The crazy place on this scenario says only what's sitting in the tzir he would forbid. You would have to cut it off, and the rest that's above the tzir would be mutar. If, however, this meat did sit in a shir kavisha, then it would be a problem, because a shir kavisha, even regular water, is a problem. You see what I mean? If it's the shir kavisha of 24 hours, then even if it's plain water, I saw a tshuva would have a problem with this. So here the question was, there was no shir kavisha, so we don't have to deal with kavush. But if it was a shir kavush, then even if it's water, it would be a problem. So that's not the question here. But then I saw there is a difference. There is a small difference if it was shir kavisha, if it was not hudach from the melicha, rishonim. If it was not hudach, if it did not rinse it, then it's still salty. Whatever there is salty, and it could be a problem. But if it was rinsed, then it may not be such a problem. We'll see that more in Sif Chaf. What happens when you don't rinse, or you do, so we'll leave it for later. But as I told you, there are some who say if it was not, even if it was hudach, if it sat 24 hours, it's a problem. Alright, so that was the second case. The second scenario was that it was sitting in the tzir, kashir kavisha. Third case is meat that sat for 3 days without melicha. It was never salted, and now you're salting it for the first time in a Kli She'eino Menukov. How's that? So remember, the first scenario was you salted it, then you salted it again. This scenario is you never salted it, 3 days went by, and now you're salting it for the first time in a Kli She'eino Menukov. This one is also for sure Asar, and Tzli won't help. That's how the Taz learns from the Yam Shlomo, because we are concerned that maybe a little bit of blood will come out. Remember, in the first case, we had a memon of shach. If it came out the first time, I don't worry about it. If it didn't, then why say that the second time it will? On that, the shach argued. But in this case, there was never a first melicha. The Taz understands from the Yam Shlomo that, well, this is the first melicha. We're not going to say nothing is going to come out at all. It was never salted, even though it's after 3 days. It's a Kli She'eino Menukov. We're concerned, and it's just like any melicha in a Kli She'eino Menukov, which is a problem. Tzli may not work. Scenario number 4. We have the meat that sat for 3 days without melicha, and then you salted this meat with other meat that they never had melicha done to them. So here you have two kinds of meats. One meat that, by mistake of course, the guy didn't know what he was doing. He put it all together. They're salting all the meats together. One of those meats has not been salted for 3 days. It's old meat. Sitting together being salted with meat that's fresh. The Taz says it's that the the meat that sat for 3 days is going to become usher from the blood of the other meat. Why? Usually, when meat is salted together and meat is falling and dripping on other meat, why do we say it's okay? Why don't we separate the meat? Oh, one piece here, one piece here, one piece. Why? You can put it all together, and we're not concerned. Because you say dam mishrik shorik, the blood is slippery, and as far as being reabsorbed, it's not a problem because I did the toret polit. I did the toret le miflat lo bola. In other words, as it is preoccupied to expel the dam, it's not going to be bolea. They're all together in this. It's exuding its blood out. It's not going to absorb. Or even if it did, kebalo kach poltoi. We said those two ideas, kebalo kach poltoi plus I did the toret le miflat lo bola. But this piece of meat that's sitting here that was not salted for 3 days, we don't say that. On him we don't say. Why not? Because we said Melicha does not help after 3 days, so it doesn't have that koach. You don't have that pretext. You don't have that that advantage, and therefore it will be only bolea without being able to expel. It doesn't have anything to expel. It can't expel. It appears to be that this meat, the Taz would say, would be also even bitzli. The shach on this one is interesting. Sometimes, the Taz is machmir and the shach is mekel. And sometimes the other way around. Shach is machmir and the Taz is mekel. Here, the Taz is machmir and the shach is mekel. He's choylek on this, in the Kudas HaKesef. He says like this: all we have is the Chumras HaGeonim, very, very specific to what they say. That Chumras HaGeonim does not have a Mekor in the Gemara, and they were very specific where it applies. Therefore, don't go ahead and apply this Chumras HaGeonim in other situations as well. I saw some very nice explanations about this scenario. Because logically, it appears you should know that the Taz is right in this. If you say that there's nothing coming out, then why should we allow that piece of meat? No. It's going to absorb, logically. But I saw two things. The Shach brings, the Nekudas HaKesef brings down, the Chumras HaGeonim only applies where they said it applies. You didn't salt the meat for 3 days, go ahead and do it sleep. But here, you want to apply that Chumrah here, that is sitting with all these meats that are fresh, and it's going to absorb? No. Not so quickly. I'm going to tell you that perhaps there is some plita coming out of this meat nevertheless. All the Geonim may have said was the salt doesn't get it all out, all the blood out. But it doesn't mean there's no plita at all. I'm going to say there is some plita too. And once you have some plita, you're safe. Who says that this meat will absorb? So you see how the Shach says. You see how what he's doing? He says, don't take that chumrah too far. By itself, you can't do melicha anymore. It doesn't help. Do it sleep, fine. But to say that piece of meat no longer, it doesn't expel anything and therefore absorbs and it becomes aser, and according to the Taz, even for tzli, you're taking it too far. I'm going to say that there's some plita, and if there's some plita, that means it won't absorb. It's coming out.
So,
yeah, he does.
So whatever is coming up is sufficient to
You can say
from
that it's keboilo kachboilo, yeah. Now, the Shach only means to say that you can do tzli after this. That's all it means. It doesn't mean you can cook it or anything. You can do at least tzli. Anyway, I saw Crazy Placing, very nice. He said, the Crazy Place says, you know what the Geonim said? The Geonim only said the blood dries up, not the tzir. The Crazy Place explains, the Geonim never said everything gets dried up in the meat. They said the blood dries up. Somehow it gets frozen in the meat. They never said tzir dries up, and the meat has tzir. It has this brine, liquid, juice. Not everything dries up. It's still something there. So the tzir comes out. The tzir can come out. Not the dam.
already prevented from blood.
And the tzir will prevent it from absorbing blood. I thought it was interesting. Good to know.
So whatever comes out doesn't have to be. As long as there's
something coming out, exactly. Okay, scenario number 5. We have the same meat also sitting around for 3 days. And now you salted this piece of meat with other pieces of meat that had already been salted. Okay? This piece of meat has not been salted. 3 days went by, and now you're salting it with other pieces of meat, but these other pieces of meat have already been salted and rinsed. Okay? And it's all in a kli she'eino menukov. Right? You see how this one is different? In the first case, we had it with other pieces of meat that were not salted yet. Okay?
That was scenario 4.
Right. And here we have, they're being salted together in a kli she'eino menukov, of course, which is another problem. But the other pieces of meat have already been salted and rinsed. Oh, okay, they've been salted, that means they don't have blood. Yeah, but this guy who hasn't been salted, he has blood, may be coming out. That's the problem in scenario number 5. So the Taz here is Machmir, says, hey, this other meat sitting there is going to become usher from this meat. Why? Because that meat has been salted already. Remember, the kli is not in a menukov. It's been already salted. That means it's not maflit. It won't be able to protect itself, defend itself, right? So it's going to be boileah from the basar, from the first meat. In other words, the Taz wants to say, don't apply the churmas hagoinim in a kula situation. Oh, no blood comes out. No, maybe some blood comes out, which I find very interesting because he didn't say that before in the other scenarios. Here, all of a sudden, he's concerned about it. All right. So, in other words, he wants to be machmir. It's a kli she'eino menukov. I saw Rabbi Elyahu on this, and he takes it one step further. He says, what? Kli she'eino menukov? Even in the kli she'menukov, that other meat that was salted and rinsed, once you rinse it, nistamu, the pores are closed, it can still absorb from this dam. Rabbi Elyahu wants to be machmir even in that. You have to be very careful in these kind of situations. Obviously, somebody that knows what he's doing hopefully should separate the two. So that was Rabbi Elyahu. Pirmei says on this, the reason why the Taz is not going to be so machmir and only says a kli she'eino menukov is because the Taz has the following 3 tzirufim to be matir. Tziruf, what means additional reasons to be matir. One tziruf is, whoever says for sure that hadocha seals pores. Remember we saw that before, Ilan?
Yeah.
That it's not a certainty that hadocha, last hadocha, will seal the pores. Maybe something can still come out if you apply salt to it again. So therefore we have that, remember that? Nobody says for sure that rinsing it will seal the pores. And if you can rely on that, that's an additional tziruf. A tziruf means an additional thing that I can attach to this to be more linear. So you have tziruf number 1. Who says that? Adocha for sure. No. Number 2.
Seal anything.
Somehow the water, after you finish drawing the blood out and you salted it,
the salt with excess blood.
Somehow after that,
Does
the water.
Intuitively, does it meet and you rinse it off?
It could be because some claim, as we will see in the next seif, that water sometimes has the effect of hardening meat.
The chayra then should give us a big head, and we
not the
rinse
first
it
water,
before.
right? But not the first water. Apparently afterwards. Yeah, it's a question. You're right. It's a question. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, maybe it doesn't seal the pores. It could be that after 3 days, no dam will come out at all. Who says some dam will come out? You're suspecting maybe some, but maybe no dam at all will come out. So we have a second tziruf. And it could be that you still say dam mishrik shorik, that the blood will be busy, will come down, will flow down. Still, nevertheless, it's always slippery. It's always going to flow down. So therefore, the Taz would not be machmir necessarily in the kli. Number 6, which is the last scenario, is the meat that was without salting for 3 days. Then you did melicha to it. Still, you rinsed it out, and you roasted. You didn't cook it. You did what you were supposed to do, but you wanted somehow, I don't know. Either you forgot or you salted it anyway. Whatever it is, you went ahead and you salted it. And you did hadacha, of course. And then you went ahead and roasted it. Can you cook it now? What's the question? The question is, remember what we said before. There's a big machlokes, can you cook after you roast? But this guy has a plus. What's his plus? He salted it anyway.
But it was too late.
Did that salt help him at all? That's the question. We are told that after 3 days of no salting, you can't salt it. Just go ahead and do tzli. Okay, fine. And after this, can you do bishul? No, not really. All right, but this guy, for some reason, went ahead and salted it anyway,
Effective.
which is supposedly not so effective. Then he did it tzli, of course. Can he do bishul now? Did that salt in any way help him to be matir bishul lechatchila according to everybody, even the mechaber, after the tzli? Remember, they have a problem. Don't do bishul after the tzli. We're not sure that tzli got all the blood out. Yeah, but I also did melicha. Yeah, but maybe the melicha didn't help you at all. Or did it? That was the scenario number 6. Thus brings down that since he did both, he did melicha, which he wasn't supposed to do, but he did it anyway, and he did tzli, then he has 2 advantages. He has a plus. He's allowed to cook it.
Why not? After 72 hours.
No, because it's a towel.
No, yeah, we don't say that it's lechatchila, okay, because there is a prima godem, which we saw, I think, last time, that in case it's Erev Shabbos and you have to have cooked meat, and all you have is this meat that has not been salted for 3 days, and you're going to do tzli for it, because that's the halacha, the prima godem says you can go ahead and cook it. Shasat chak. What's a example? Shasat, we give Pesach, remember? Pesach, where you're not allowed to have roasted meat on the Seder. So here it says Erev Shabbos, the Prima Godem says that's also Shasat Chak, that's the kind of meat you have to have. So because the Prima Godem was matir only b'Shasat Chak, by the way, this Prima Godem says, if you're going to do this b'Shasat Chak, go ahead and salt it first. If I let you, so this is, it's interesting, based on this Prima Godem, it could be that this whole scenario would be muter lechatchila b'Shasat Chak. In other words, this is the Prima Godem. Prima Godem says, okay, Erev Shabbos you have to have cooked meat, but it's not salted for 3 days. Okay, go ahead and do tzli, and after the tzli, I allow you to be mevashel. But I'll allow this on one condition, says the Prima Godem. You first do melicha anyway. Yeah, melicha is not supposed to work. Yeah, in this case, it's not going to work, but it may work a little. Since I'm being lenient here and letting you cook it after the tzli, go ahead and salt it first. So you see, so he's giving us a situation similar to the Taz, but the Taz is talking in a b'di'evet situation. And he says, if the guy did it anyway, he has tarti l'tivuso, he has 2 advantages, the salting and the roasting. On that he can cook. Not really, I don't think so.
What is
Yeah. Yeah.
what is the advantage that everybody holds?
Because the whole thing is a chumrah anyway. And since the salting may help, it's questionable, maybe help. So if you did both, the Taz says, I'm not sure for everybody. At least the Taz, at least he gets, like you say, he got away with it. The Taz says, you did both, but the Eved, not lechatchila. Go ahead and I'll let you cook it even after the roasting.
Now the b'di'evet was in stand around for salt. That's the b'di'evet.
Right.
From there onwards, the salting, the roasting, and the cooking is all lehatchila.
Yeah.
The b'di'evet is not that. It's only that you didn't lehatchila decide and plan and schedule to let it stand for 3 days. That's
No, of course not. Yeah,
that's
of
the
course.
lehatchila.
Yeah, that's not the lechatchila, right.
But the salting and the sealing.
It's not, yeah, right.
It's not that.
So the
since you already salted it and
Yeah.
and he cooked it, now he's allowed to
Right.
eat it.
Comes along the Prima Godem, and in his situation, he says, if I'm going to give you, this is going back to the other one, in the other scenario where it's a Shasat Chak, okay, I'm going to let you do it in a Shasat Chak, Erev Shabbos or Pesach, but since I'm going to let you do it, just make sure you first salt it. In other words, I'm going to require salting it too. In other words, just to be extra safe, that we get as much dam as we can.
What
Is that?
Yeah, go ahead.
What is the Shachat Chak for Shabbos? I'm taking
Right.
Shabbos. What is
Yeah, no, the Shasat Chak is Erev Shabbos because you want to have cooked meat, not roasted meat.
Why is the Shachat Chak simply because it's a preference?
Oh, that's what I remember. That's what I mentioned earlier. That's exactly what I mentioned earlier. That's what I mentioned earlier. So why would this be? You can have it as a sli. Why make this as Shasat Chak? Remember that?
Yeah,
that was the
but
yeah.
normally you would. It's a Shasat Chak. If it's cooked, it's only if it's Shabbos.
Right.
Because Shabbos.
You don't have enough
food
time.
is on a-
Right.
So it has a different status.
Different state. Yeah.
The, appreciating and enjoying the food.
Enjoying the food.
is
Okay.
part of the mitzvah.
Right. So, but there will be an objection for that, perhaps.
People pay
Yeah.
good money for barbecue. Why do we allow Seriously.
Yeah, barbecue is better. According to some, the taste is. Yeah.
So, only Shabbos you can have.
By the way, I something for Shabbos. I prefer cooked chicken for some reason.
Because you grew up that way. What about it?
No. Actually, I'm the only one that eats the chicken from the soup at home. Everybody likes it baked. Somehow, when Shabbos comes around, I just like the lighter one.
You grew up
The
that way
cooked.
when you were
Yeah?
at home. You were that way.
Is that right?
That's probably how you
You know what? I forgot.
You forgot.
I forgot how I
Next
am.
time you tell us about his child.
Actually, the cooked chicken is the kids don't necessarily all like cooked chicken. They like something more flavored. Cooked is very, but I find it lighter, not so heavy as the roasted and with the sauce and everything. But anyway, so we have the Prima Godem that says it's okay. but salted first. Yud Gimel we're going to do next week, but just briefly, it's a very interesting halacha, so I'm just going to read it inside. Just to read it. Im shohu, v'im shoru oiso b'mayim tocha gimel yomim, but if you did somehow, you remember, to soak this piece of meat within the 3 days in water, then you have an additional 3 days minus a half an hour. Now, why minus a half an hour?
After that,
Okay.
but not.
He doesn't talk about freezing.
As 3 days in water.
Rabbi Moshe says you shouldn't do it lechatchila.
I'm just saying, according to one who outlawed it,
Outlawed it, yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it wasn't in frozen water.
Right, no.
It's
Yeah,
frozen enough.
that would not be enough, no.
So it has to be
Really frozen,
room
Rabbi
temperature
Moshe. No,
for this to work. What he just said is if it is in water,
not 3 days in water. If within the 3 days you took that piece of meat and put it for either a half an hour, depending on which posek you follow, there's various opinions how long that rinsing or soaking has to be. But the bare minimum is a half an hour. Actually, there's one opinion that says you don't need soaking, just rinse it well with water, and that would do. But we'll get to that next week, because here the Mechar doesn't say how much it has to sit in the water. Just, but if you actually shoru oil, so you actually soaked it in the water, you could wait an additional 3 days minus a half an hour. Why minus a half an hour? Because you don't want it to be 3 days without melicha, right? So if you start, it says pochos chatzi shah. If you half an hour is the time that's required for hadacha, the first hadacha, for it to soften the meat.
no, for the salting.
No. The first hadacha to soften the meat, right? So if you don't have, if you're not going to do minus a half an hour, by the time that it has sat an additional half an hour, you will already be beyond the 3 days,
Okay, now what is going on here? So within the first,
right?
I watered it for,
Yeah,
soaked it for minutes.
right.
So now it had its first hadah.
You salted it or you
No.
rinsed it? You soaked it? What?
You soaked it for
Right,
20 minutes.
right.
So it had its first hadah.
Yeah, that's
right
not
now.
that's not a
Do I
problem.
have to do another hadacha after the 3 days are over?
No, but you did not. We're talking about when you didn't do anything.
I thought you were talking about right now a case where within the first 3 days
You didn't do anything.
You soaked it.
You soaked it because somehow, you didn't soak it for,
Not for a half an hour?
no, not necessarily, but let's say you did. It doesn't have to be.
Now if you did, when you had the first soaking,
Right.
so why would you have to soak it a second?
You still have to do it all over again.
You have to soak
Yeah,
it a second
all
time
over
before you
again.
soak it?
Yes, very good question. We'll get
How
into
often can you do?
We'll talk about it next week. That's also a good question. Yeah, how often can this go on indefinitely? Yeah. The problem, remember, the problem is without the refrigeration, they couldn't really meet outside for too long. So this was just a one-time thing.
I understand that,
But technically, it can go on. Yeah, it can go on. But we'll talk about it next week. In the parenthesis, he brings down here that Basar shenimlach v'safek in nimlach toch shloisha. If you salted it, but you don't know if it was after 3 days or within the 3 days, it's mutter. Because that's a safek on a chumra sageoinim, remember. Something concerning a chumra, which is all a safek derabbanan, like the Gra says. Why is this mutter? This fake derabbanan lahakol. Kol shekin kehai gabla shu chumra sageoinim. This is all it is the chumra sageoinim. So kol if a safek derabbanan is, you can be makel kol shekin this, which is a chumra sageoinim. So if you have a doubt, did 3 days go by or not? I just salted it. You already did. It's a safek lahakol. All right, Mr. Hashem, we'll see this more in depth next week.